Say YouTube, and then you can start.
Ah, there it is. Okay. Okay, I'd like to call this HAC meeting of Monday, October 19th, 2020 to order. First item on the, first, I think we need to approve the agenda, which isn't on the agenda.
Say YouTube, and then you can start.
Ah, there it is. Okay. Oh, why is it playing back?
I just had to turn off the speaker too.
Okay. All right. So do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Scott moves second.
Second.
Second by Jason. Roll call. Jason,
Yes.
Glenn,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Shauna,
Yes.
and me, yes. Okay. Moving on to approval of the September 21st, 2020 meeting minutes. I know you just got them this morning. Would anybody like time to read them over, or do we think we're ready to go ahead and just approve them?
I read them and I moved to approve the minutes.
Okay, do we have a second?
Seconded.
Okay, and so we're all, does anybody have any changes to the minutes? Any additions or changes? All right, it's moved and seconded that we approve the September 21st, 2020 meeting minutes. Roll call, Jason,
Yes.
Glenn,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Shauna,
Yes.
and me, yes. Okay, moving on to old business. We're done. It's toward the end of the year, so let's get some, see if we can get some final information on our check-ins of the 2020 top 5 goals. Okay, so housing development incentives and requirements. Shauna, do you have anything additional?
I don't have anything additional. Sam, I know you're super busy with lots of things. Do you think that you and I could talk about it before the next HAC meeting?
Yeah,
At some point?
we can. Yeah, what's do you want to talk about a schedule, or do you want to just exchange some emails on?
Yeah, we'll just exchange emails. I mean, unless you have something to update about that. I figured you did not. So I guess the point is that Sam and I will meet before the next HAC meeting to talk it over.
That's fine. We'll table it till the next meeting. Does anybody else have any information or comments about the housing development incentives and requirements part of the top 20 or top 5? No? Okay, moving on to B, mitigation of non-performing properties. Glenn, do you have something you'd like to contribute?
Did some research on the topic. I don't know how to phrase that in a legislative way that would not invite litigation. Sam, I don't know if you know a way around that, but like as it's currently or as we discussed it, it just seems pretty difficult to create legislation that would incentivize performing properties outside of the blight thing that we talked about before. But based on the stuff that I've seen, at least in real estate investment forums on the other side of that, like the people that actually own the houses or landlords, it's easily argued away. So I'm still trying to figure out a way to effectively craft some sort of legislation. And I don't know if you have any insight on how to get around that kind of thing, but I haven't been able to find one yet.
Okay, yeah, I'll give it some thought. I think this is probably one the staff would rather see not on the list, just because our current law director and city manager, I don't think want to give this much idea of optimism that it's realistic, unless we wanted to set aside, if we wanted to increase our level of risk averseness or set aside some money to sort of prepare for a lawsuit if needed. I think that might be the only way to really discuss it, move it along. Otherwise, it might be time better spent on something else. But
yeah,
I'll give it some thought.
Yeah, I looked into the thing on the other side of it, you know, like on the real estate investor side of it, and it's a tough one. I don't see a defensible way of doing it that doesn't include obvious issues of blight or obvious issues of disturbing the peace or something like that on the property, which I think we already have ordinances for that stuff. So
Are you talking residential or commercial, Glenn?
rental places, what used to be called short-term rentals being used. I don't know if you saw that Kathy Zine email that came in
I scanned
About-
over. Yeah.
about how some of those places are now being utilized as extra annex houses to throw parties in.
Yeah, I don't know if there's any fact to that, but I did read it.
Yeah, I have not been able to verify those allegations either, but it is plausible. I just don't know if there's any way you can legislate around that either without inviting litigation.
And Sherry, I wanted to point out that Ann Welton's in the virtual audience and has her hand up. I see Jason wants to speak as well. Just wanted to let you know.
Yeah, Jason, you and then Ann, please.
Yeah, I was just trying to separate categorically the litigation issues between commercial and residential. And then you mentioned short-term rentals, which is sort of somewhere in between. But like, is it the same threat to, sometimes we have business properties that have been vacant for years versus houses that are unoccupied for years? Do they both represent the same sort of litigation threat around fines and fees and regulations that we're talking about?
From what I've seen, yes, because if you don't live in a place and you're using it to generate revenue, it's a commercial property. It doesn't matter if it's in a residential neighborhood or not. But if it resides in a certain type of zoning, it's going to have different rules around it. But, I'm talking about commercial properties that reside in R1, 2, or 3 districts, not in general business or uptown or something like that. They just don't have the same kinds of ordinances around what can and can't be done. And my focus, or at least the spirit of when I brought this up, was residential property that's being used as a rental, not being utilized to preserve value, or being utilized as an Airbnb outside of our Airbnb rules. And like, we've started to pass some more ordinances regarding the what used to be called short-term rental stuff. And now I'm hearing more creative uses of what used to be called short-term rental stuff being employed. So that brings it allegedly brings up another set of challenges to develop solutions around.
Agreed.
Thanks.
Okay, so Ann,
I'll need to turn on her microphone just a moment.
okay.
I think you're still muted, Ann.
Hi, I don't have a comment or a question. I just wanted to say hello and let you know that I'm here, listening to your meeting and checking to make sure that's okay.
Howdy, welcome.
Thank you.
Okay. So Glenn, is the bottom line that this is something that just seems impossible to do right now and that we should sort of not consider it for next year?
I would say it would be of the lower priority compared to the other initiatives that we have going, due to the challenges that are posed for it.
Okay. All right. And do you plan on sort of continuing to think about it?
Oh yeah, I'm part of several real estate investment groups, and they all talk about various municipalities' rules that get passed regarding residential based commercial property. I'll just call it that. And how they're addressing certain things. For example, how they're doing a lot of furloughing of rent and things like that because of COVID-19 and the effect that it's having on them, because they were relying on that income to pay the mortgages on the houses that they're buying, and they don't get the same protections as the actual person living in there. So like that's the kind of stuff that I've been looking at, and they've had the same kind of discussions that I just presented to you. Is how do we defend against these particular things? And it's actually very easily defensible, because you would have to prove that either it's causing a disturbance to the neighborhood and the neighbors would have to complain about that, or there would have to be evidence of it causing a safety issue in the neighborhood. And if you can't prove any of those things, then that the building just sitting there dormant is a rightful use of that property, like a land use rights. Like they can do nothing with that, and that's their right if they choose it.
Okie dokie. All right. Thank you very much for your time and thinking about this and doing research and everything else. It's been very helpful. Thanks a lot, Glenn.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Okay, D, the Western Knolls property development, Sam?
So you're skipping over home purchase.
Oh, I'm sorry. C, home purchase assistance. Well, that's because Steve isn't here. Does anybody else have any information and or concerns? Because I communicated with Steve yesterday or Friday about what he said. He had asked me if there was something he was supposed to be working on, and I told him so. But he's not here to help us out. So maybe at the next meeting we'll be able to do the item C.
Is
Terry,
he
I was going to recommend maybe, that this could be addressed possibly through the recruitment of other or new members too. Maybe that might be another.
Yep, absolutely. Yep.
I didn't mean to cut Scott off there.
all right? I thought he was looking for what has sold in the last, since the beginning of the year. So maybe I misread what he wrote.
No, I think what it was, Scott, and Sherry, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but if I remember correctly, it has to do with finding like a program for a down payment assistance that is a local program versus a county program, because there is a county program for that.
Okay, I misread. I must have read some part where we was wanting to find out about what homes have sold for this year. But we're okay, never mind.
No, it's Scott, what we're gonna need from you is the rental information.
Yeah, I got that.
Okay, Steve, welcome. Perfect timing. We're on item C. Are you with us, Steve?
I don't know.
Well, we have a response to a question, so yes, you are. Perfect timing. We were just to your point of home purchase assistance.
Well, one of the things that I saw in the paper was the intent of the county commissioners to spend a lot of their CDBG money on housing issues. So I think there's an opportunity for I don't know if the city can apply for additional funds beyond what it usually gets, but there's an opportunity for a nonprofit organization to apply for some funds that could relate to assistance for low income and moderate income individuals in the community. So that was the most interesting piece, and I didn't get a chance to check with Desmond Mayta to get any further information about that. And I still think that we could arrange an affiliation with neighborhood housing services. I don't think they feel that they are not interested or available to serve Oxford. I just don't think they've really had an invitation nor opportunity to work in our community before. Well, with the exception of there are two homes that they were involved in building on Harvest Lane, which is a small cul-de-sac off of Autumn Drive where I live.
Yeah, we're reaching out, Sam and I are reaching out to people in that group to see if they would be interested in joining our commission. So maybe we can see if they respond positively and then take it from there. Does that make sense, Steve?
Yes, it does. Lori DeStola was raised in the area and is a Talawanda grad.
Sounds great. Let's hope she likes us enough to join our little party.
I'll press.
Okay.
We were in Hamilton leadership a long time ago with the Chamber of Commerce. And
Great.
I apologize for being late. I'm just not tracking well, old man here.
Well, your life is a bit chaotic at the moment. Okay, now Sam, Western Knolls property, please.
Sure, thanks. So right now we're negotiating back and forth with the model group, who's the primary proposer, and working with them on, and I don't know if you saw the news that went out from Jessica Green, but there was a little blurb in there saying that the purchase might be delayed, and I can explain that. What that's related to is there is an annual funding application through Ohio Finance, Housing Finance, or as we affectionately call OFA, OHFA, and that's in February each year, and that would be the primary funder for the Episcopal Retirement Model Group project. And so if the funding is not applied for or received in this coming February, it could go into February 2022. And so we haven't yet landed on a council recommendation, but it looks like the recommendation will probably be from staff that the purchase option extend into 2022, so that way we could still open up the possibility for up to 2 funding cycles if they do not apply for the 2021 round. And the downside to that is it would tie up that 8 acres or 10 acres, however it works out to be for that time period, but nothing has happened the whole time the city's owned it anyway. So the risk on losing out on a quality development might be pretty low. So that's the reason for that little news bite. So it wouldn't affect the senior center sub proposal either. But the way we're working on it is model group and Episcopal Retirement kind of driving the boat, if you will, and we're kind of letting that be the template for how the rest of it works out. So we probably, if we recommend it and council approves it, then we will probably still have a purchase agreement yet this year, but there wouldn't be any substantial transaction for some time pending the funding. And of course, the worst case scenario would be that the funding is not received and the project doesn't go forward. But we could say, well, we would have at least tried and waited. And so I think that's really the best update we have. There's not really a good opportunity for housing advisory to have input on the design, the layout, the income, all that kind of stuff. What I might recommend, if it does continue to move forward, and we all hope that it will, is once it gets into the planning commission realm, you might have somebody that kind of acts on the behalf of the housing commission to show up at the meeting, whether it's Zoom or in person, to ask some questions, provide some comment actually during the meeting versus kind of after the fact, as maybe we had talked about in the past. You recall the discussions we've had about adding housing advisory in sort of the review pipeline, but I think the way we landed on that would be better to just be there during the meeting.
I mean, can that be me or Jason?
It would be you, yeah, Shauna, yeah, I would think.
But I just mean it doesn't need to be an additional person coming in and, okay.
Yeah.
So we can take care of that one way or the
As long
other.
as
Okay,
you're present, it shouldn't be any problem at all.
okay.
If not, you definitely want to make sure that somebody's there. So that's really all I have, unless you have questions on that topic.
Jason?
Yeah, is it okay to speak now about what has been being discussed? Like, what are the goals the city is trying to reach that have been somewhat debated or still in contention?
So the main goals are really just ones that are in our code, comprehensive plan, and the goals of the Housing Advisory Commission. So we haven't honed in on the specifics of income levels. We do know it's going to be somewhere in the 40 to 50 range of dwelling units. And there will be a fairly long time period where there would be income qualifications that would last longer than the 15-year requirement. So, I mean, the goals that we have in the code for environmental protection are pretty good based on the last tree ordinance. It's in a location that it's already in the city, and of course it's connected to urban infrastructure. And it would meet our goals as far as a diversity of housing types. There's demand for it, we think. Episcopal Retirement's been looking in Oxford for a long time, and they work with model groups, so we don't have any doubt that there's a good reputation there, good history. So it's really just a matter of kind of waiting for the attorneys to work out all the fine print before we can get it to a point where we recommend approval to City Council. So I don't know if I touched on any of the topics you were looking for, but that's about all I can say without getting too much into the more confidential details, I guess.
So
Yeah,
Sam,
that was
water
good.
and sewer is already there on the property?
I'm sorry?
Water and sewer is already there on the property?
Sewer is not, water is. So the city has voluntarily agreed to go ahead and extend the sewer and upsize it from the other side of 732. So that's probably a $50,000 to $100,000 project as kind of our contribution. And water is already on the site.
Great. Any other questions, comments? Okay, point E, housing instability solution. Jason, homeless report.
Yeah, where to start on that? I guess not everybody's been following the CARES Act funds, but the city is working on helping some of our local charities, like the Family Resource Center, provide access to shelter through purchase of hotel rooms and also leasing of houses for transitional living. So there's a lot of progress there. The thing I'm looking towards in the future is making sure that's sustainable, because right now it's sort of being set up for about a 3-year time period, if I understand it correctly. And then after that, can we provide, and we as in the city itself, the greater city, all the charitable organizations, can we work together to sustain that going forward? That's about where we are at.
I have a question. I think there's a gap in our meeting minutes that needs to be filled. The individual houses, could you bring us up to date on that? Because that's something that was not discussed in the last meeting.
The individual houses being leased? Yeah, so we have at a very, very, very good price. I can't remember if it's one house with 2 sections or 2 houses, and somebody else can fill this in, but multiple rooms that should serve to provide transitional living for at least 2 families, I believe. Sorry, I don't have all this offhand, but it's something I've read about multiple times. Oh yeah, and Glenn might be able to answer some of this.
Okay, Glenn?
Bob Blackburn wants to help with a couple of houses that he has, and he's willing to give the city / FRC favorable rates for that transitional housing.
So they were empty, Glenn?
I don't want to speak on additional details because I don't want to provide bad information. I just know that he had some places available that he was willing to provide if we needed cold sheltering or transitional housing.
Great. Scott?
I'm just curious, if you know these houses, are they also part of the set of his
The 9 that he had?
that he has for sale?
I don't know. Like I only know what I just told you, and I don't want to speculate anymore by saying any of the other stuff.
Do you agree, Glenn, that the rates are very good?
I mean, they're way better than college rates. So, you know,
What's he offering to us for?
don't know those details either, but I know that they're not college rates. And what I mean by I don't know those details is I don't know the exact number. So if I said a number and I don't want it to be wrong.
So is he dealing with FRC or is he dealing with the city directly?
That is going to be a question for, I would say, Jessica Green as to how all of that's going to work out. I'm going to make an assumption here, and please understand this is an assumption. So if it's wrong, I'm an ass. Hopefully you guys won't be. But the FRC is supposed to adjudicate all that, and then they're the ones that are going to have those resources available to them. So the city's not really going to be involved other than arranging resources so that they can administer those resources as needed.
Okay, great. Anybody have any other information about housing instability solution for 0.5?
I might be able to add something. It's still very early on, but I've been talking to other charities in the community as well as some of our various religious groups that care about these topics. And there might be other properties made available to us charitably going forward in the future that could maybe serve that purpose of transitional housing or shelter or otherwise. So I'm going to keep following that up and keep everyone informed as I get more information.
Great, terrific, thank you, Jason. Oh, Steve.
I guess it kind of fits in here. I'm hearing a piece of information that the Garnett Farm on Brookville Road has sold with several of the older members of the community who wanted to downsize into nicer one-story properties, but not purchase into a long-term care facility like the Knolls. That they've at least that the property might turn into 8 or 10 houses that would be 55 and above in the and not subsidized in any way. So maybe in the $150,000 to $300,000 range per property. But I think it's positive that it keeps another segment of the community staying here rather than moving elsewhere.
Great, thank you, Steve. Okay, any other old business before we move to new business? Alrighty, new business topics, officer election discussion. Okay, Sam, do you want to take this?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So Sherry and I talked about this, and we wanted to open it up to anyone to serve as chair or vice chair. And we haven't had these opened up and discussed for quite a while. So we can do it now. We can do it future. Sherry, I know you're not dead set on continuing doing it, but it's up to you guys how you want to do it. It's helpful for me to have a single point of contact, and Sherry's been a good one. So happy to continue if that's how you want to do it. But if you want to switch things around, or if you want to wait until new members may or may not be recruited, that's fine. So I don't know what else I can add, but
I'm happy to keep on, but anybody who wants it is, I don't want to stand in anybody's way.
I nominate Sherry as chair of the HAC.
I second with 2 thumbs up.
Okay, Sam, do we need a roll call for this?
we do. Yeah.
All right, Jason,
Yes.
Glenn,
Yep.
Scott,
Absolutely.
thanks. Shauna,
Yes.
Steve,
Amen.
I'm not gonna vote. I abstain. All right, well, I thank you very much for your confidence in me. It's wonderful to do this. I really enjoy it. I love working with Sam. He's incredible, and you guys are really top notch. You've been able to participate and help out every time you're asked, and I really appreciate it. All right, so now we have meeting time and day discussion. Sam, do you want to take this one?
Sure, yeah. So kind of along the same lines, the meeting time and date can be adjusted. And we've been doing the Mondays, third Mondays at 1:30 for a while. As long as that's working for everyone, it's fine with me. If you do want to change it, we can do that. But if you want to wait until there's anyone, leaving or coming on the board, you can change it then. It does help to have it consistent for the public. So try not to change it a lot unless you have a good reason. I usually recommend when there's someone leaving or coming on to the commission as a good reason to do that. But if somebody has a change of schedule, new job or whatever, that's fine too. And I understand Sherry has a new job, but we did talk about it and this meeting time still worked for her. So however you'd like to do it.
Yeah, my thought is that let's see if we can get some new members since we now have an option of going up to 9 and see if we get people from like Butler County or something like that whose schedules may not fit very well into, having a Zoom meeting at 1:30 is great. By and large, everybody can do that. But once we go back to trekking into Oxford, it's going to be different. So does everybody think that we should just keep it this way until we see who else comes onto the board? I see a lot of heads up and down. Glenn?
I have no preference.
Okay, all righty. So we'll just chug along as we are for a while. All right, 2021 top 5 goals. Of our top 5 goals of 2020, how do people feel in terms of whether we've pretty much done what we can on those top 5 goals? And does anybody want to forward 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 onto the 2021 list? Just because they don't think we've completed enough information or done enough to say that we have completed it. And so once we see how many of them are going to be transported, then we can see if we've got room for additional things for next year, which we can start thinking about. So are you happy with what we've done? Is there something that still needs to be worked on in terms of the top 5?
I think that the developer incentives item has not been completed. I would see that as a good goal for 2021 to see if we can get those into place before massive development happens, right?
All right, so item number 1 is going to be carried over.
One thing I might recommend, if I could chime in, Sherry, I don't know if any of you like the SMART goal kind of concept, but that might be something. I know Jessica uses that a lot, and I'll say that her influence is affecting city organization, and it's something I've learned as well. I just haven't used it a whole lot. So just to kind of spread the love a little bit, we might use the specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, timely kind of framework. A specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, timely. So, as you look through these goals, if they sound a little too vague or kind of like maybe we talked about with the mitigation of non-conforming properties, if they don't seem attainable, maybe it should be replaced for something else. Or maybe we could take the existing goals and add something more specific to it. So Sherry, Sean and I are going to be talking. So obviously we will probably want to take that goal and just to make something happen, be more specific about what it is we're wanting to get done and have a timeline for it. So just an idea, it might help us to be more strategic about which goals are on here, which ones aren't.
Well, that's good, because I was going to take your suggestion of the specific, measurable, attainable, and relevant and dump it on Shauna and tell her to rewrite that goal, the goal number 1. But now that she can work with you, that should make life easier. Yes, Shauna?
Yes, I'm writing down that you want me to do that.
Yes, Jason.
I don't want to sign up for doing a whole bunch of extra work, but I think the motivation behind most of these goals should probably carry over, even if we want to reword them and restructure them to be more SMART goals. But are there any that should be taken off? Like, for example, Glenn just mentioned that it might not be feasible to address non-performing properties, so maybe that one might go.
Right.
But a lot of the other ones have aspects, and certainly for me, number 5 is a focus, so I definitely think that should carry over. And maybe that could become specific in terms of sustaining what will be done through the CARES Act. Like, that's one specific thing that might apply there.
Okay, so you want to rewrite item number 5 to reflect Jessica's great suggestions?
Yeah, do I get Sam and Jessica's help as well?
Sure. You of all people can easily get Sam and Jessica's help.
Yeah, but I know how busy they are too.
All right, so
I know I missed the conversation that it was finishing just as I came on about the non-performing properties, but that personally concerns me a great deal. And so if it's really dead, I'm very sad about that. But anyway, yeah, I could see where using SMART on any of these would make some sense. And I'm willing to do number 3 if that helps. I think we should continue to work on that.
that's great. Now, one of the things that I would like to say is at one point, Sam sent one of the Miami students to me to do some research. And I got into the Ohio Revised Code to do research on landlords and landlords' responsibilities and renters' responsibilities. And the landlord's responsibilities are about like this, and the renter's responsibilities are about like this. So it doesn't surprise me that Glenn has come up against a brick wall trying to find something that we could actually work with, because it's the way that everything is structured for, businesses so that they don't get shafted by their renters. So, all right. So Glenn, you think that we can actually chuck item 3 for next year?
Yeah. I'll just throw this one out there. So doing that research, the non-performing property thing is probably not going to work. However, one thing that I've seen over the years is I'm pretty sure we're up to 19 or 20 different neighborhood overlays that reside on R1 property. I mean, at this point, we might as well just incorporate that into the R1 zoning code. It just seems as though we have so many of those things being propagated through the city that it makes a case that we should integrate that. So, like, what do you think about that, Sam?
Yeah, actually, Jung Han and I, the former director, talked about that quite a while. So, yeah, let me make a note of that and talk with Zach and the law director too, to see if we want to do that. I think you're right. Almost every one of the overlays is in R1A. There might be a couple that have some R2A, which are going to inherently have more rentals. But yeah, that would be less work for staff, to have that kind of baked in to the code. But
and it also sort of addresses the inherent problems with what I was talking about, dealing with the blighted stuff and other things like that. Because it would significantly, well, I guess it would dissuade renters from trying to, or landlords from trying to acquire property in R1A areas.
it could. The downside I could see is, if we wanted to have more variety within neighborhoods, it might actually turn that the other direction. if somebody wanted to build a duplex in a low density neighborhood, which is actually what the planners in my field are recommending kind of across the country as a way to kind of do away with single family zoning, kind of throw out that idea of single family zoning because it has been exclusionary, and it hasn't promoted diversity. I don't know if having a limit on the number of unrelated would prevent someone from having a rental in what will look and smell like a traditional single family neighborhood, but we might have to get more creative with lot size in order to help cash flow a rental, because in order for it to be a rental, it's got to pay for itself, like just as you've been talking, like a business. So we can give that some thought to see if there's a synergy there between those two concepts that will still, in other words, I don't want to go backwards on a goal that, you have in your legislation that we just, put into effect, which is diversity. And I don't think it was that specific within neighborhoods, but that's what creating community is about.
Yeah.
Is that there are, there's a mixture of incomes and lifestyles within a neighborhood. So it's not completely, Euclidean as the term that the old zoning codes use, where it's divided up by income essentially.
Mm-hmm. So to summarize, I would prefer to morph that goal from what it is currently to what Sam just said.
Right. So that was my point, was it, Glenn, you and Sam go ahead and rewrite item 3 to fit what you're talking about. And that way we can put that as our new item, one of our new items, or one of the items that are semi carryover into 2021. Does that make sense?
I think you're talking about item 2, not item 3.
Ah, yes, you're right. I apologize. I stand corrected, Steve. Shauna, you had your hand up?
Yeah, it's kind of going backward on the conversation, but I definitely would love to see situations of blight be dealt with better, more of a punitive kind of thing. Definitely have seen in my own neighborhood where blight has been allowed for 10 years. So that was my comment. I'd just like to see that strengthened.
Thank you.
Hey, Shauna, do you know if the blight in your neighborhood is a result of property that is being used for profit?
So there's no longer blight in my neighborhood. There were 2 houses in particular that spent several years in that state. One in particular for 10 years. But they have actually been purchased. And I believe both of them are Airbnbs at this point in time.
But they got fixed up. I mean, like there's no more blight.
Correct.
Okay. Well.
And Scott, you had a question? You're muted.
I'm fine now. You guys covered it.
All righty. Okay. So Steve, you're going to take care of item 3, correct?
Right. And I guess I'm wondering about 4, whether, it seems to me that we still got 37 acres at a minimum there to deal with, and that dropping that off entirely makes no sense to me, but I don't know how to take credit for the fact that Sam and team, got the RFP out there. And so that's a wonderful win for this year. But anyway, that's all I've got to say on that.
Sam, you want to comment on 4 should stay, but should it stay worded the way it is now, or should we reword it?
I think rewording would be a good idea. One of the concerns I have is there could be a desire to kind of piecemeal sell the rest of it, and the other interested parties may not be as concerned about making it integrated and having a variety of housing types. So, there's of course pressure from the surrounding neighborhoods to not have anything different than what they have. So there's going to be, not everyone's going to get what they want, essentially. So to the extent that this group can advocate for continuing with the goals of offering something that's not offered elsewhere, I think that would be, since the city does own it, and I know it's something that Councilor Prithridge has spoken a lot about too. It's our opportunity to kind of practice what we've been preaching. So,
So do you want to work with me on rewording it?
What's that?
You want to work with me on rewording it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, we can do that.
Okay.
And Jason had a comment on that, I
Oh,
think.
sorry, Jason, go ahead.
No, it's okay. I was just going to say, so at this point in that process, is that our only course of action, to be very vocal and try to influence where things are going forward? Are there any other methods or approaches that we can try to influence towards those goals?
Yeah, nothing's coming to mind. I have asked if it would be legal and acceptable to sell portions of the property without going back out for an advertisement. And I've been told that no, it would not be, because of how the process was done before. So if that changes, I guess I'll report back. If it did change, then I think that this commission should be concerned, because then that will mean there'll be less influence on the outcome. Because once it's sold to anyone on the open market, then they act as if they're anyone else, and we lose our ability to influence the outcome. So I guess it depends on what we want to do with the revenue, from that. So if we're not as concerned about the revenue, or if we need the revenue, then maybe we're not as interested in influencing the outcome. So, and maybe that's the talking point from this group is, if the outcome cannot be steered directly, then can the revenue be used for something that can be steered directly? So I know you talked about, and how can the Housing Trust Fund be, beefed back up or whatever? Probably some of this money that we would use would be put back into the sewer extension, but I don't know about in the future. So getting those things to kind of be in the same bucket, if you will, would probably be something this group could have a lot of influence on. But it does require keeping track of what's happening on council agendas and asking staff, what the status is on a regular basis. That really does have a lot of influence.
That sounds great. Is there any way we can sort of incorporate that into the goals that we are now writing or rewriting? Because I love the idea of that balance, right? If we don't get the influence we want towards the goals we want, well, then can the resulting revenue be put towards that? It seems like an easy, obvious transition logically.
Steve?
I'm not big on jumping ahead with that idea. I think that this is one of our few opportunities to affect the kind of residential mix change that we'd like to see. And since we're the Housing Advisory Commission, I don't want this to have, been a one-year goal and then we pat ourselves on the back and give up and say, okay, we'll just spend the money, which isn't going to be that much when it, comes down. Well, I don't know. I haven't run it, but still, it's not a huge amount of money to have on hand to blow through, since it won't be replaced. Yes, the idea that funds generated might be used towards other purposes is good, but I hate to see that happen right away.
I agree with that, by the way.
Donna, you had a question?
Well, it was kind of a comment, and we just mentioned the Housing Trust Fund. So we don't actually have as one of our goals. We had lots of discussion about, we had a whole meeting about the, funding for the Housing Trust Fund, and then we tabled, what are we going to use it for? So I'm not sure how to make that into a SMART goal at the moment, but it seems to me that in 2021, we need to figure out the funding for the Housing Trust Fund and also what uses we're going to put it toward.
So would that be part of 3?
And we have room for new goals. Remember, we're getting rid of some and there's no natural limit on the goals that we can set up.
Well, actually, 2 is being rewritten. Which one are we getting rid of?
What did we decide on for the blight? I know we were going to still consider it, but I wasn't sure if that's going to be.
Glenn and Sam are gonna rewrite it.
Yeah, we were going to replace 2 with a discussion about neighborhood conservation overlays and whether that can be baked into the code or how that would be balanced with diversity within neighborhoods. And if something needed to change, that would be a new goal.
That's right.
So Steve, if Shauna works with you on item 3 and adds the funding, would that bog you down, or do you think it could be added there? I think you're muted.
I think that makes sense there. It's a vehicle to accomplish some of the pieces that we were talking about.
Shauna, how do you feel?
Sure. I mean, to me, the housing trust fund feels like its own separate goal with creating, funding and then uses. But if it can be folded into 3, I guess so. I think, I don't know. I kind of prefer that it be separate just because then it's working on the, housing trust fund,
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of steps to that. I mean, we talked, for instance, about TGL, hospitality tax, partly going toward it. It feels like that's a whole, like getting those revenue sources and uses into place feels to me like a separate goal.
Okay, well, okay, so city council people, if we were to go from 2020 top 5 goals to 2021 top 6 goals, how would council think that was odd?
No.
Okay.
The 20% increase in goals, I won't stand for it.
Sam, what do you think? Can we add a goal?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, so then number 6, although not necessarily in that order, we're going to add Shauna's housing trust fund point. And so if this is what you'd like, then you can. Do you want me to work with you on the wording with it, or do you want to work with Sam?
I can do either. Yeah, either.
Okay.
I don't, I definitely think that before the next meeting, we can figure out the wording to that.
I think so too. All right, so.
And I'd like to volunteer to work on 5, thinking of it more as an evaluation of the first portion of the 3-year effort. And as Jason had said, focusing on beginning to think about how we can sustain that after the CARES Act money is gone.
All right, so you and Jason want to work on 5 together? That works. Sounds good to me too. Are there any other things that you would like to add to that, since we've now added a 6th goal, that you would like to maybe add for additional goals that we can start on in 2021 and maybe carry over to 2022? Anybody have anything that has come up this year? Jason?
Yeah, so one thing we're several counselors are working on and concerned with is solar. And that includes one section that is trying to do it city scale. And another is just sort of working on making cooperatives for individual residents to organize together to put on rooftop solar. So I don't know if that's something we want to consider for the commission. I mean, I'd certainly be in favor of it, but I don't want to add another goal. That might be too many.
Well, we've increased population, hopefully, so that will help.
I'd like to talk with you about that, Jason, to see if there might be any methods that help help in some way underwrite home ownership and possibly build it in to item 3.
Okay. That
I'd be
sounds-
interested in that.
Yeah, I want you to convince my landlord to put solar on our roof. Okay, anybody with anything else? All right, you've got, yes.
Well, I wanted to jump back to what Sam was talking about earlier, with taking some of the money that comes from the 47 acres if you just sold the thing outright, because we continue to get nothing but pushback from all the neighbors. We're going to hopefully get the senior or lower income housing through Steve. That'd be great. But can we search out some property that is either owned by the city or owned by Tri or privately owned that we could purchase, build the units to the specifications that will enhance most families, and then sell them as investments to investors under basically like a condo, where they actually own that piece of the building. So the investors buy that quadrant of the unit. He can hold it, he has to hold it for X period of time. The city gets their money back and can move on to the next project. And that fund the following project, help fund the following project. One after the other. You have to start somewhere in order to snowball it.
Sam?
Yeah, thanks, Sherry. I was just going to say that there just turns out that there happen to be several new housing developments that seem to be in the incubate kind of stage right now. So some are not even public yet. So it'd be interesting if we were, as a city, or if there was a nonprofit to manage, could partner with one of these projects that might be moving forward rather than starting our own, just to kind of take advantage of that economy of scale, because there's so much overhead in the startup of new construction. So I like the idea of it. But if we were to start from scratch, I would definitely want to get someone like Lori involved, since she or someone like her has experience with, kind of having that nonprofit public service approach in the housing as the tool. But I like the way you're thinking with, allowing one to cash flow to the next, just so it continued to grow. That makes sense.
You had mentioned the property, Garnett's property, that there were up to 10 units going to be built, anywhere from 150 to 300,000.
Well, that's what I've heard through the grapevine. That's all, Steve.
Oh, Steve. Okay, I didn't know where it came from. Okay, yeah, it's like I find that hard to believe that you can actually build something for that kind of money. Or if you can, how big is it, and how functional would it be for interim housing, or does it even need to be that big? I'm just trying to figure out the price point here of actual cost to build new.
Yeah, the cost to build is if you're talking detached, is over 200,000. So it's pretty pricey just to get started. So almost any new construction affordable housing is going to have some kind of housing assistance to make it affordable, which is why converting something, kind of to Glenn's point, that's been going on for the past year plus, converting something that already exists is actually more affordable. But if it can't be made available, that's a non-starter. So that puts us back to new construction and partnering with someone else. So that's kind of the direction I was going in. And the farm property that's been talked about, it's not currently in the city. It's over 20 acres, so no one has even called us yet, to kind of get the process started. So there's really not much known about what may or may not happen out there.
Well, I'm trained in attached co-housing, so if anybody's talking about that kind of stuff, let me know. Scott, do you want to work with Sam, to put another item, agenda, top 7 goals for next year? Do you think you'd want to do that?
Sure.
Great.
If that's a feasible thing that like Sam thinks we can put together and council would like it.
It makes sense. I don't think the city has the bandwidth to administer it, but I think we can, if we can find a good partner to work with, we can help make it happen. And I'm fine with having more and more goals as long as they are smart.
Yeah. Well, we figured that you would knock it down if you didn't think it was doable.
I would.
Okay. All right. Well, any further information, concepts, ideas? Oh, Steve.
Well, I'm wondering whether to any degree keeping track or knowing what the university is doing about all of its underperforming properties, and I don't know if that relates strongly enough to housing, but I continue to find that to always be really curious. And then we've kind of mentioned it here, and about other developments. I brought one that was rumor, but it was based on someone who was an instigator of the project. So I'm pretty sure that it's a founded rumor. But I would still love for there to be some way that HAC gets to learn about housing developments early in the process so that we can provide some pressure. And I don't know that either of those need to be goals, but maybe they're just the values that we're working under.
Anne?
I just wanted to share on the Brookville Road, Garnett Farm. They're talking in the email that went out, they were talking about 54 individual ranch homes or ranches, homes and condos with the price range about 250 to 350. So because you were wondering about that, now, like Sam said, this is all way preliminary. This is in an email from Pat Gifford. So that's where the information is coming from and what I know, but it's way preliminary. That's all.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah, I would just like to know what the university is going to do in general in terms of housing. I don't know how we find out at all what the plans are for student numbers or anything else, but that's going to have a big effect on housing in town. If anybody has a pipeline to the university, let me know.
I don't think they know.
Probably not.
We usually find out a few weeks or days before something's going to happen, but I think Jason's right. There's a very difficult process of trying to understand. Okay, how many do we say yes you can come? How many actually come, and then how many come and then say okay I'm going to leave, and trying to keep all the beds as full as possible, and all of that process is pretty challenging.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, they can fill all the beds on campus they want. It's the off-campus housing we need to worry about.
Well, would have been vacant this year had it not been for sophomores.
Yeah. Okay. So should we move on to member recruitment update, Sam?
I don't have anything further. I think you kind of mentioned that earlier. So you and I have a couple of people that we've agreed to talk to, and they were just kind of going on our short list from there. So seeing how people's responses are. And
in terms of something update that I forgot to put on the agenda, Steve reminded me that Scott had said that this would be a good time of year to find out about rental properties in terms of what's left to be rented. And I asked Scott to find as much information as he could about it. So Scott, do you have an update for us?
Yeah, basically, this is going off the 450 property management company. They've managed about 440, 450 properties. Right now, as of today, there are only 10 student rentals that are available in town through this management company. And 2 of those are above, that are available are above Cafeteria for a reduced rate of $3,000 per person per semester, which is a huge drop because it's been up close to $5,000 a person. But it's only available for the second semester, so that's not in high demand, only having it rented for 1 semester. Anyway, the other one, there are 10 student rentals, period. Then there are only 8 family rentals available. And this is not an overlap of like there was before. This is separate. And that's about a 4% vacancy in total, which is, in management terms, that's pretty good. It's actually very good. But right now, just rates for the family, so get an idea as to what is the going rate. A 1-bedroom, 1-bath is $575. The tenant pays all the utilities. A 2-bedroom, 2-bath is $1,000 is per month. But the owner pays water, sewer, trash, and the heat for that $1,000. And the 2-bedroom, 1-baths go for $675, and the owner pays water, sewer, and trash. So there's some incentives there with the owner paying the water and the sewer, trash, and the one guy paying the heat as well. But still, that's only 8 families left in the Oxford area. So it's stronger than it was a month ago. It's better conditions. So.
Okay. And do they expect that next semester will be a fall off, or does the university know what it's doing next semester yet?
Oh, everything else is rented for the rest of the school year.
Okay.
It's just those few that are missing the second half.
Okay.
Or there are 10 students, so the other 8 student rentals right now are just vacant from here on out.
Okay.
But the other ones are rented completely through.
Scott, on the family rentals,
Mm-hmm.
there were 8 that were available.
Yes.
Do you know what the total number is that they manage compared to the 450 student rentals?
No. It's 450 in total, 440 in total.
Okay.
God, I think it's about 320 in students.
Okay.
I think that's about right.
Roughly.
I used to be able to do it because they had them separated. You could scroll through what had already been rented. Now they've taken that away, so you can't get a full total count.
Okay. That's so helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Anything else, fellow commissioners? Any other points we want to talk about? All right, then I suggest we have somebody make a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn. It's Steve.
Steve made the motion, second. Jason seconds. Roll call for adjournment. Jason?
Yes.
Glenn?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Shauna?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Me, yes. Okay. Thank you all very much for a very productive meeting. And everybody has their marching orders, right? Okay, thank you very much. Thanks, Sam.
Thank you all. Bye-bye
Thanks,
now.
everyone.